Before the National Day holiday, Julian Croft had promised he would spend the entire vacation with me, helping to prepare for our wedding. On the eve of the holiday, however, he called to tell me something urgent had come up at the lab and he wouldn't be able to make it home. Julian had always been a man of precision and reserve, so I should have felt completely at ease with his explanation. But my trust wavered when, just a few minutes later, an anonymous message lit up my phone screen with a hotel check-in confirmation under his name. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach as I recognized the name of the establishment. It was famous for its romantic suites. My first thought was a fleeting hope that the perpetually serious professor had finally decided on a spontaneous romantic gesture. That hope was immediately extinguished by the memory of his phone call about lab work. The lie was too blatant. I left my office and drove to the hotel, my mind a storm of worst-case scenarios. The hotel room door was ajar. Inside, a young woman sat on the bed, wrapped in a white hotel towel, her laptop balanced on her crossed legs. She looked up at me without any surprise, offering a disarmingly sweet smile. "Hello, Miss Vance," she said. I narrowed my eyes, my gaze shifting to Julian. He was on the phone, his back to the door, completely oblivious to my presence. "Miss Vance, my name is Chloe," the girl continued, her smile deepening to reveal two small dimples. "I'm one of Professor Croft's students. We had some data that we absolutely had to finish processing. He was worried it would look bad for my reputation if we were seen alone in the lab so late. So he brought me here. Please don't misunderstand." She finished her explanation with a playful little stick of her tongue. My heart felt as if it had dropped into my shoes. Julian was a man who operated on logic and reason, almost to the point of emotional detachment. He had never made a special effort for any woman, and that included me, his fiancée of 5 years. Yet this student, Chloe, was telling me that Julian had gone out of his way to book a hotel room specifically to protect her reputation. A bitter taste filled my mouth, and I suddenly lost any desire to maintain a polite facade. "If you're here to do research, then do research," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Who are you trying to impress with your bare arms?" The girl's smile vanished, her expression freezing in shock. Her large, beautiful eyes quickly filled with tears. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I'll get dressed right now." As she stood up, I saw that Julian's suit jacket had been draped over her legs. The sudden tension in the room finally broke through Julian's concentration. He ended his call and turned, his face a mask of surprise. "Alara, what are you doing here?" "I just arrived. Is that a problem?" My tone was cold, and he immediately picked up on my anger. He let out a sigh so quiet it was almost inaudible and began packing his things to leave with me. "Throw that jacket out," I said, pointing at the jacket in his hands. "You know how I am about cleanliness. I don't want something some random person has touched." The air in the room grew thick with unspoken words. Chloe's face was pale and Julian's brow furrowed in disapproval. He set the jacket down and walked out of the room with me. In the 5 years we had been together, he had never seen me lose my temper like that. If this had been my younger self, Chloe would not have escaped with just a few harsh words. But I had tried so hard to mold myself into the calm, dignified woman I thought a professor's wife should be. Julian, however, didn't seem to appreciate the effort. "Chloe is just a student, a kid," he said once we were in the car. "You didn't have to be so harsh." "A kid?" I laughed, a humorless sound. What kind of kid does data analysis with her professor in a hotel known for romantic getaways?" "Julian, are you actively trying to sabotage your career?" He slammed on the brakes, the car screeching to a halt, and the force of it sent me jolting forward against my seatbelt. "Alara, watch what you're saying," he said, his voice raised for the first time I could remember. We were just working with data. I had never heard him speak to me with such anger. Julian was, in my eyes, flawless. He was admired by countless women, yet his focus was always on his work, his experiments. He never gave a second glance to anyone who wasn't relevant to his research. That was why I had always felt so secure with him. But something had clearly changed. "Julian," I said quietly, "this is the first time we've ever argued because of another woman." He rubbed his temples, a deep weariness settling on his features. "I don't want to argue. You're the one being unreasonable. I'm going to stay somewhere else for a few days." You need to calm down. We'll talk when you've had a chance to think clearly. The September evening air in the city was cool. Without another word, my fiancé drove away, leaving me standing alone on the dark, empty street. I pulled my coat tighter around myself, a sudden, chilling realization washing over me. This wedding might not happen after all. That night, I went home and came down with a high fever. I spent the next day and night in a delirious haze, and when I finally felt clear-headed again, I remembered that today was the day Julian and I were supposed to go for our wedding dress fitting. I had slept through the entire day without sending him a single reminder, and he hadn't sent me a single message. Instead, it was Chloe's social media that was active. The first picture was a table laden with elaborate desserts. The caption read, "Professor says eating sweets will make me feel better. I'll eat every last bite so he doesn't worry." My breath caught in my throat. I had been asking Julian to go to that specific dessert shop with me for months. Every time, he was either too busy or simply forgot. A strange, hollow feeling spread through my chest. I kept scrolling. The second post was a photo taken at the bridal boutique. She was wearing my custom-made wedding dress, a sweet smile on her face. Behind her, Julian was looking at her with an expression of unmistakable tenderness. They looked like a perfect, loving couple. The caption for this photo read, "Repaying a favor with a meal. Got roped into helping out today. My professor asked me to help him try on a wedding dress and give some feedback. Can everyone tell me if there's anything about this dress that needs to be changed?" My mind went blank. When the reality of what I was seeing finally sank in, an icy coldness spread from my core to my fingertips, and I began to tremble. It felt as if I had spent 5 years nurturing a beautiful garden, only for someone to come and dump a bucket of crawling insects all over it. The flowers were still there, but the entire scene was now utterly repulsive. For a moment, my first instinct was to find Chloe and tear her apart. But I knew that squashing an insect like that would only make a bigger mess. I needed a different approach. I called my brother and asked if he could lend me one of his more handsome friends for a day. I also called our family's housekeeper and asked her to prepare several gift baskets with nutritional supplements and had our driver get them ready. Finally, I made a reservation at one of the most well-known restaurants in the city. The next morning, I hosted a lunch for all of Julian's graduate students. I gave each of them one of the gift baskets as a small token of appreciation for their dedication to their studies. The only one who didn't receive a gift was Chloe. University students are naturally curious and love to gossip. When they asked what was going on, I answered their questions honestly, without embellishment. As I spoke, the expressions on their faces changed from curiosity to shock and disapproval. Before our lunch was even over, the story of Chloe's behavior was already making the rounds on the campus's anonymous confession forum. After lunch, my brother's friend, Daniel Sung, arrived right on time to pick me up and take me to the bridal shop. Daniel was undeniably good-looking, with a well-proportioned figure that would be at home on the cover of a magazine. Compared to Julian's cool, intellectual demeanor, Daniel had a much more approachable and visually striking presence. More importantly, he was incredibly patient. I must have tried on over 30 wedding dresses, and for each one, he patiently put on a matching suit and posed for photographs with me. The resulting pictures were stunning. It was an experience I had never had in 5 years of being with Julian. When we were finished, I posted all the photos to my social media accounts. My caption read, "My fiancé was too busy eating dessert with someone else, so I had to find a stand-in. Everyone, please help me decide. Which one of these looks the best?" By the time I had finished, the situation on campus had already exploded. Someone had connected the dots from Chloe's own social media posts and identified her as the subject of the anonymous confession post. Her usual cloying and attention-seeking behavior at school had already made her unpopular with many of her peers. This new scandal was all the ammunition they needed to turn on her. The online criticism grew so severe that Chloe was summoned to meet with her academic counselor. After a 3-hour meeting, she emerged with a pale face and red, swollen eyes. On her walk back to her dormitory, she was met with whispers and pointed stares from other students. Unable to handle the scrutiny, Chloe went to Julian in tears and told him she wanted to withdraw from the university. 2 days later, Julian showed up at the home we were supposed to share. Ilara, was it really necessary to go after my student like this? He demanded. Do you even want to get married anymore? Causing a scene like this right before the wedding? This was only the second time in 5 years I had seen true anger on his face. Both times it had been because of Chloe. I wasn't someone who enjoyed being angry. Frankly, the entire situation was beginning to exhaust me. Julian, I need you to understand something, I said calmly. None of what I did was a whim or without reason. This all started with you. The realization seemed to dawn on him, and he was the first to back down. I don't understand the complexities of social situations, he said, his voice softer now. I just do what I think is right without considering all the angles. You've said before that girls like sweet things. She was crying all night because of you. As her professor, I felt I should do something to make up for it. As for the wedding dress, the designer was about to travel abroad. I saw you were sick, and I was worried you wouldn't make the appointment in time, so I asked Chloe to help me out. His eyes, normally so calm and unreadable, seemed to hold no deceit. His willingness to explain himself felt like a concession. Since he hadn't committed an unforgivable act, I saw no reason to continue pushing the matter. To do so would mean the end of our relationship. I can teach you the things you don't understand, I told him. But I will not tolerate you having conflicts with me over other women. Dealing with someone as emotionally dense as Julian, I realized that endless anger was pointless. Making clear requests would be far more effective than arguing. And one more thing, I added. To the rest of the world, you might seem rigid and boring, but I have always cherished the simplicity and purity of your emotional world. Julian, I have zero tolerance for any blemishes in that world. I hope you never lose that quality. With everything finally out in the open, Julian smiled and pulled me into an embrace. Don't worry, he murmured. You will always be my only wife. Julian was always decisive when it came to taking action. Now that I had clearly stated my feelings, he immediately arranged for Chloe to be transferred to a different professor. I also went online and posted a clarification about the school rumors, which saved her from further public embarrassment. Life seemed to be returning to normal. We went back to the bridal shop together to try on the wedding dress again. I have a strong aversion to wearing anything secondhand, so I spoke with the designer and arranged to have an identical dress made after the final alterations were complete. When I finally put on the dress that I had waited over half a year for, the lingering darkness of the past few days dissipated completely. Every single detail was exactly as I had dreamed. The perfectly tailored skirt accentuated my figure beautifully. Julian was speechless. He came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist, and looked at our reflection in the mirror with a sigh of genuine admiration. Ilara, he said, you are the most beautiful bride I have ever seen. He confessed later that seeing the photos of me with Daniel had made him jealous, and he insisted that we take a full set of pictures together that day. The bridal shop had separate dressing rooms for the bride and groom. I was in mine, halfway through having my makeup done, when Chloe arrived. Ilara, what gives you the right to make decisions for me without my permission? She asked, her voice sharp. From her very first words, it was clear she hadn't come for a friendly chat. I politely dismissed the makeup artist. You only have him because your family has money, she sneered. Professor Croft's real passions are reading and research. Do you even understand a word he says when he talks about his professional work? You're not worthy of him, Ilara. I looked at her face, which was alight with a triumphant pride, and I offered a small smile. Julian is not some poor scholar, you know, I reminded her gently. And we have been together for 5 years. Perhaps she hadn't expected such a calm response to completely neutralize her attack. Her expression soured. Her eyes darted to the small table next to me, and then she suddenly lunged forward, grabbed a glass of water, and threw it directly in my face. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor with a loud crash. I instinctively raised my hand to shield myself, and before I could even lower it, Chloe was covering her own face and collapsing to the ground, sobbing. At that exact moment, the door opened. Ilara, have you not had enough? Julian rushed in and helped Chloe to her feet. He looked at me, and his eyes were filled with nothing but disappointment and rage. My heart plummeted. Julian, I asked, my voice trembling slightly, do you believe me, Or do you believe her? I believe what I see, he replied coldly. The instigator of the entire scene now wore an expression of pure provocation. The man holding her then pronounced my sentence, listing my supposed crimes one by one. Ilara, if you hurt Chloe again, I will have to seriously reconsider whether this wedding should happen at all. Julian immediately retrieved the transfer application, allowing Chloe to once again become his student. During the holiday, he held an online meeting with all his students, warning them to watch what they said and did, threatening to drop them as his advisees if they didn't comply. The students all lowered their heads, and though I could sense their resentment, they all typed "received" in the chat. That wedding dress was ruined. I took a pair of scissors and cut it to shreds. It was my possession. Even if it was destroyed, I would not let anyone else have it. That evening, I went to a bar, still wearing the elaborate bridal makeup I'd had done earlier. I drank until the world started to blur. In my drunken haze, a handsome face appeared before me. "Miss," a kind voice said, "why would you come to drown your sorrows when you're wearing such beautiful makeup?" I shook my head, trying to focus, and finally recognized him. "Daniel," I slurred, managing a small smile. I raised my wine glass and drained it. "You wouldn't get it. A lady has to maintain her beauty, even when she's drinking, even if it's for a breakup." All right," Daniel said with a helpless smile, raising his own glass. "To beauty." Just as he spoke, an image flashed through my mind. Julian, holding Chloe, walking away from me. I shook my head to clear it. "To freedom," I declared, and downed another glass of wine. Daniel must have sensed my darkening mood because he gently took my hand as I reached for the bottle again. "You shouldn't drink so much when you're feeling this way." "My mood is excellent," I insisted. "I'm not down at all." "Has someone wronged you?" he asked quietly. "Wronged?" I looked into his concerned eyes, and a wave of bitterness rose in my throat. The question just tumbled out. Do all men like girls who are delicate and act helpless? A flicker of surprise crossed his face, but his answer was lost in a sudden commotion. A fight had broken out across the bar. A drunk man was causing trouble and had apparently hit the bartender. The bar's owner, caring only about appeasing the aggressive customer, was demanding the bartender apologize. "Ilara, if you hurt Chloe again." Julian's words echoed in my ears. Before I even knew what I was doing, I had walked over and slapped the bar owner across the face. "Scumbag," I muttered. He stood there, stunned. "Let's go!" Daniel grabbed my hand. "Run!" The wind whipped past my face as he pulled me through the streets. The cool night air billowed his clothes and tossed my hair, and for a few moments, all the noise and worries of the world were left behind us. I don't know how long we ran. We finally collapsed together, sitting ungracefully on the pavement of a main road, laughing uncontrollably. The alcohol has made my memories of that night feel fragmented, but I can still vividly recall the scent of the evening breeze and the sound of Daniel's voice. "A girl who lives her life boldly and freely," he said, "is the most beautiful and the most likable." It wasn't until the next morning, nursing a painful hangover, that I realized Julian had been waiting for me all night. "Ilara, you're really something else," he said, his voice tight with anger. "Hitting someone in a bar and then running off to get drunk? Chloe cried all night. Don't you think you owe her an apology?" After sipping the honey water our housekeeper had prepared for me, I looked at him and calmly said one sentence. "Go to hell." Julian's face contorted with fury, and he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The house fell silent, and the world was peaceful once more. The 7-day National Day holiday had been almost entirely ruined by Chloe. I was feeling thoroughly depressed when my doorbell rang insistently. It was Daniel, standing on my doorstep in a simple t-shirt and casual pants. The morning sun framed him, and he was smiling like a happy golden retriever. "Amusement park," was all he said. I had taken Julian to that same park once, years ago. He had told me that places like that were meaningless and a waste of valuable time, and that I should visit them less often. Returning after 5 years, I realized how wrong he was. Amusement parks are designed to bring people joy, and the pursuit of happiness is perhaps the greatest meaning of all. But even in such a happy place, I ran into someone who made me miserable. Miss Vance, do you really dislike me that much? Chloe asked, suddenly appearing before me. Can't you just let me go, no matter where I am? I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to maintain a pleasant expression. Don't make me ruin a perfectly good day by slapping you, I said through a tight smile. The girl flinched and timidly hid behind Julian, who had been standing beside her. But this time, Julian didn't seem to hear her. His gaze was fixed on Daniel, his expression hostile. Alara, he said, his voice low. Who is he? I linked my arm through Daniel's and smiled sweetly up at him. This is the man I took wedding photos with. Hearing this, Julian let out a frustrated sigh, his tone shifting to one you might use with a misbehaving child. Stop this nonsense, Alara. It's not what you think between me and Chloe. Just go home. I will explain everything to you later. His demeanor was completely different from how he'd been at my house, when he seemed ready to go to war to get justice for the delicate girl. What was the difference? I looked from Julian to the man standing beside me. Was because of Daniel. Julian, I said, my voice even, what Chloe is doing with you is no different from what I am doing now. He froze, a flicker of confusion on his face. But before he could say anything, Chloe's eyes rolled back and she fainted into his arms. I watched her eyelids tremble, and without a second glance, I pulled Daniel away. While we were waiting in line for ice cream, I asked Daniel, Aren't you curious about any of this? He handed me a strawberry-flavored cone, his expression unconcerned. The only thing I care about is whether you'll cut your losses before it's too late. Cut my losses. My 5-year relationship with Julian was supposed to end in marriage. My anger was real, but so was my reluctance to simply let it all go. But as I'd told him before, I cannot tolerate any kind of betrayal in my life. I knew deep down that this was a relationship that could not be salvaged. I was just waiting for the final, complete disappointment. Fate, it seems, has a strange sense of humor, and some relationships are just doomed. While I was waiting for Daniel at the park entrance, Chloe appeared again. Julian was not with her this time, and she had reverted to her usual arrogant demeanor. I know what you're trying to do, she said smugly. It's that tired old trick of making Professor Croft jealous so he'll come running back to you. But I'm about to show you who he really values more. I just glanced at her and said, You're insane. Chloe became enraged. She rushed at me and knocked the ice cream from my hand, sending it splattering onto the pavement. I had barely turned my head when she was suddenly on the ground again, crying out. As if on cue, Julian appeared. Ilara, if you have something to say it to me, he pleaded. She just fainted from heat stroke earlier. A lump formed in my throat. It felt like I had swallowed a fly. I was disgusted, but couldn't even bring myself to curse. At that moment, Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between me and them, completely blocking my view of the scene. Mr. Croft, he said calmly, there are security cameras at the entrance to the amusement park. Facing someone who was so clearly biased, Daniel knew that further explanation was futile. After saying that, he took my hand, led me to his car, and we drove away. He stopped the car at the top of a mountain overlooking the city. He met my questioning gaze and explained, The view here is incredible, and it's the perfect spot to watch the fireworks. More importantly, up here, you can cry or scream or curse and no one will hear you. No one will see you either. Who said I wanted to cry? I muttered. Just then, the first firework exploded in the sky with a deafening bang. The vibrant, shifting colors lit up Daniel's features, making them look warm and bright and beautiful. It was enough to make anyone weep. Amidst the continuous explosions, I found myself both laughing and crying. The young man beside me never turned to look at me, but he held my hand tightly and never let go. A whole season's worth of grievances poured out of me in a flood of tears. With my emotions emptied, I realized I was hungry. Daniel, as if he could read my mind, drove us to a late-night food stall and ordered a table full of my favorite grilled dishes. There's something I've been wondering, he said as I ate. How did you end up liking a guy like Julian? My mouth was full of food, but I propped my chin on my hand and thought back. My brother introduced us. He said Julian was a professor and that I would definitely like him. I don't know why he was so certain, but the moment I saw Julian's face, I just sort of accepted it. Everything after that just happened naturally. There was no big, dramatic moment of falling in love, so if I had to give a reason, it would probably be because he's handsome. Daniel looked at me speechless. And now? He asked. Do you still like him? No, I answered without a second of hesitation. Why not? Because he's an idiot. After that day, Julian made no attempt to contact me. Chloe, however, continued to flaunt their connection ostentatiously. It seemed Julian was now doing all the things with her that he had once scorned and refused to waste his precious time on with me. Pictures from Chloe's social media account started being sent to me. In every group photo, Julian's gaze towards her was filled with a tender affection. In a strange way, I had Chloe to thank. Without her, after 5 years together, I never would have seen this side of Professor Croft. I had always genuinely believed that he was so devoted to his research that it made him emotionally detached. Now, I finally understood. The truth was, he just wasn't willing to put in that kind of effort for me. When mutual friends started reaching out to express their concern, I blocked and deleted them one by one. Though we called them mutual friends, they were, in reality, almost all Julian's friends. Julian disdained maintaining social connections with my friends. All of my time and energy must be devoted to my research, he had told me once. Your friends are not a necessity for me to engage with. His words still echoed in my memory. Now his friends were no longer a necessity for me either. After all, people tend to surround themselves with those who are like them. While Julian was busy whining and dining Chloe, I told my brother that I was planning to cancel the engagement. He seemed to have been expecting it and agreed immediately. After getting my parents' blessing, I went to speak with Julian's parents. Over the years, they had been nothing but kind to me, treating me like their own daughter. They held my hands and sighed. It's Julian who is unlucky, his mother said. You have suffered these past few years, my dear. You are a good girl, and it's better for you to make plans for yourself sooner rather than later. They confessed that Julian had been a constant source of worry for them. He had once had a younger sister who, after a series of unfortunate events, had taken her own life. Since then, Julian had become increasingly withdrawn. He stopped talking, spent all his time locked away in his lab, and eventually cut off all contact with his parents. They admitted that Chloe's appearance had, at least, made Julian seem a bit more human again, and they hoped he might slowly recover. I didn't mention any of this to them. Since Julian and I were now a couple in name only, there was no reason for me to meddle in his family's affairs. Although our wedding was scheduled for the end of the year, both of our families, believing our relationship to be stable and certain, had already prepared significant assets for our future together. All of that now needed to be sorted out. I had assumed that my relationship with Julian would quietly come to an end. But on the last day of the holiday, a trending topic about me suddenly shot to the top of the social media charts. It all started with an online account that had been posting daily entries about having a crush on a cold, handsome professor. The writing was delicate and emotional, and it had attracted a large following. In recent days, however, the post had taken on a heartbroken tone, blaming the appearance of a third party for ruining a perfect academic power couple's relationship. The followers were outraged at this capitalist daughter for interfering. Someone in the comments section managed to figure out the real identities of the 3 people in the story. Soon, my personal social media accounts were flooded with messages calling me the other woman. When I didn't respond, they started showing up at my family's corporate headquarters to cause trouble. My brother acted quickly, having the posts taken down and issuing a public relations statement. But the company still suffered significant financial losses from the public backlash. The best way to handle the situation would have been for Julian to personally clarify what had happened. My brother, unwilling to see me treated so unjustly, secretly went to speak with Julian on my behalf, but Julian refused to help. He didn't tell me, but I found out anyway. 3 days later, I called Julian myself. Aren't you going to say anything to clear this up? I asked. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long that I was about to hang up. Finally, I heard his hoarse voice. I'm sorry, he said. Just those 3 words. My heart felt like it had been plunged into an icy abyss. For the first time, I felt that the 5 years I had spent with Julian were nothing more than a joke. Chloe had been his graduate student for less than a year, yet she had earned his complete and undivided protection. "I don't want these trivial matters to affect my students," he said. "This kind of entertainment news is temporary. If you just stay out of the public eye for a while, the interest will fade." "Your student doesn't matter?" I asked calmly. "Then do you remember who I am to you?" "Chloe is my student," he insisted. "Our relationship is innocent. The innocent don't need to defend themselves, and I truly do not want the pressure of public opinion to harm another young person." "I'm sorry, Alara," he added. And then I understood. It wasn't about what I had originally thought. Julian's sister, the one who had died, bore a striking resemblance to Chloe. Long, slightly curly hair, big eyes, and dimples when she smiled. When Julian was just starting his graduate studies, his sister had been the victim of malicious slander, and the university had consequently revoked her guaranteed admission spot. Soon after, she had jumped from a building, ending her life. He didn't want Chloe, who looked so much like her, to suffer the same fate. But what right did he have to ask me to suffer in her place? Even though I already knew the answer, I asked one more time. "So you're planning to sacrifice me?" This time his answer was silence. I smiled, and suddenly I felt a strange sense of peace. The sadness was gone. "Julian," I said, "you two are disgusting." After I said it, I blocked his number. With the last bit of affection I had for him gone, my mind became crystal clear, and I knew exactly what I needed to do next. After the holiday ended, Julian's department held a major open class that was attended by academic leaders from several other universities. I took a small camera, called my brother and Daniel, and drove to the campus. Perhaps it was the look of grim determination on my face, but when Julian saw me, a flicker of panic crossed his eyes. He quickly strode over and blocked my path at the classroom door. "Alara," he said in a low, urgent voice, "I will marry you right after this is over. Let's talk about this at home. Please don't do anything impulsive." "Who cares about that now?" I said, pushing past him and walking straight to where Chloe was sitting. Before she could react, I picked up the water bottle from her desk and poured it over her head. "This is for what you did to me," I said calmly. Then, I slapped her across the face. "And this is a little something extra." Julian was restrained by my brother and Daniel, leaving him to watch in helpless rage. I rotated my wrist, which was stinging from the impact, and spoke in a voice just loud enough for the entire lecture hall to hear. "I, Alara Vance, do not like to owe people anything, nor do I like people owing me. You threw a glass of water on me in the dressing room and then lied, accusing me of hitting you. This is what you owed me." Chloe covered her face, large tears rolling down her cheeks. "Miss Vance," she sobbed, "why do you always have to come after me? I never wanted to compete with you for anything. I just respect Mr. Croft as my mentor, that's all." "Since when is booking a room at a hotel for romantic getaways a sign of respect from a student to her teacher?" I asked, my voice cold as I exposed her lie. "Not even bothering to get dressed, just sitting on your professor's bed wrapped in a towel. And you, Chloe, are the only one of all his students who has ever dragged him along to try on a wedding dress and take pictures." As I spoke, a murmur went through the classroom, and students began raising their phones to record the scene. Chloe's face gradually turned a sickly white. "Alara!" Julian roared, his voice strained. "If you don't stop this right now, I will call off the engagement immediately." He was breathing heavily, his eyes wide with fury, clearly ready to sever all ties with me, and I just smiled faintly and continued. "There were no security cameras in the dressing room," I said, addressing Chloe again. "But as it happens, one of the videographer's film cameras was left on, and it recorded everything. If you want to keep making excuses, I brought the camera with me. We can play the footage right now on the projector for everyone to see what you really did that day." "No!" Chloe screamed and lunged at me, but I easily pushed her away. "You're too weak," I said contemptuously. "Your methods are pathetic and ineffective." She struggled back to her feet, trying to look fragile yet stubborn. "So what? As long as I want to fight for him, you will always be the one who loses." I had started to walk away, but her words made me stop. I turned back, grabbed her by the collar, and slapped her again. I almost forgot about what happened at the amusement park, I said. And let me be clear, you don't compete for him, not because you don't want to, but because you are not worthy. Upon hearing the full truth, Julian staggered as if he'd been physically struck. Ilara, he whispered, is all of this true? I met his gaze, my own eyes icy. Julian, I said clearly, let's break up. In the choice between me and Chloe, Julian for the first time chose me. He left Chloe alone in the classroom to face the dozens of cameras and the judgment of her peers, and he drove after me, following me all the way home, or rather, to my home. Ilara, I didn't know about those things, he pleaded, his voice cracking. I didn't know she lied to me and hurt you like that. I'm so sorry, Ilara. Please, forgive me. This was the first time I had ever seen the proud, aloof Julian Croft with such a look of sorrow on his face. I couldn't tell if it was because his idealized image of Chloe had been shattered, or because he was finally realizing that he was about to lose me for good. I asked my brother and Daniel to leave us alone, and then I led him out to the back garden. Julian, I asked quietly, did you really not know anything? His expression faltered, and he knew exactly what I meant. I don't believe for a second that you were truly unaware of her feelings for you. You were just afraid that if you rejected her clearly, she would leave you. In a way, Julian, the two of you are a perfect match. He covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Seeing her, it reminds me of my sister, he choked out. I just wanted to treat her like a sister, to cherish her one more time. Ilara, I swear I only see her as a sister. You are my only wife, the only one I love. The only one. When Julian had first said those words to me, I had been genuinely happy because it was so rare for him to show me any tenderness. But Professor Croft, I said, my voice soft but firm, do you truly understand what the only one means? It's not as simple as one of your experiments. The wedding dress I waited half a year for? The dessert shop I wanted to go to for so long? The favoritism and certainty that I will now never have from you? Julian, it's not that you don't understand these things, and that's why I don't want to wait for you anymore. I felt a cool drop of rain on my cheek. Soon, a dense drizzle began to fall. I turned and walked away without looking back, leaving Julian kneeling alone in the rain, completely heartbroken. My brother turned the heating up all the way, making the living room warm and comfortable. Daniel immediately draped a soft blanket over my shoulders. My parents sat on either side of me, each rubbing one of my hands. My aunt had cooked a table full of all my favorite foods. Inside my home, I was surrounded by people who loved me. I had more than enough love in my life. If Julian was either unaware of how to give love or was simply unwilling to give it to me, then I would not grovel for the meager affection he had to offer. I, Ilara Vance, would never grovel. The real-life drama of a fiancée confronting her rival generated far more buzz online than some sad, lovesick diary entries. We gathered the evidence and reported Chloe's online activity to the police. They quickly discovered that the accounts spreading rumors and doxing me had all been created and managed by Chloe herself. She had laid a trap and ended up getting caught in it. Public criticism was the least of her worries. She was now facing potential expulsion from the university. But she didn't seem to care about any of that. Her days were now spent finding Julian in bars and taking care of him while he was drunk. Some of the mutual friends who had stayed out of our personal affairs couldn't stand it anymore. They started advising me to know when to stop. You were together for 5 years, one of them said. Julian never actually crossed the line. Why are you being so ruthless? He really loves you. He was just being a little more caring towards that girl. There's no need for you to be so intolerant. Upon hearing about this, my brother and Daniel, without any hesitation, joined forces and launched a series of strategic business maneuvers that put heavy financial pressure on those friends' companies. Soon enough, they no longer had the time or energy to spout their unsolicited advice. After reclaiming the assets that had been set aside for my marriage to Julian, I took a portion of the funds and opened an art gallery. I had wanted to do this years ago, but Julian was always so busy with his experiments, and he felt that a gallery would leave us with even less time to see each other. So, I had put my dream on hold. Now, I had picked it up again and was finally returning to being myself. On the day the gallery opened, Julian came. He looked thin and haggard. He stood at the entrance holding a bouquet of flowers, and when he saw me, he forced a bleak smile. "Elara," he said, "I've missed you." I was already fairly well known in the art world before I met Julian, but for the sake of our relationship, I had spent 5 years teaching art in a small studio. Now that I was opening my own gallery, many of my old friends and colleagues came to show their support. Daniel was the most enthusiastic of them all. This was the third time Julian had seen me with Daniel, and the hostility in his eyes was more intense than ever. "I went to see our house," Julian said, his voice low. "You've already sold it. Are you really this determined to erase everything? Are you just throwing away 5 years of our lives? Is it because of him?" Just then, a reporter who was covering the opening asked Daniel who he had been working so hard for to help get this small gallery up and running. Daniel smiled politely, and his bright eyes found mine through the crowd of people. "For the person I like," he said clearly. "For Elara." Daniel had already confessed his feelings to me. I felt that since I had only just broken up with Julian, it wouldn't be fair to him to jump into a new relationship right away, so I hadn't given him an answer yet. But no matter the occasion, whenever someone asked him about it, his answer was always firm. "Elara," he would say, "is the only reason for me." I remembered asking Julian once, "You've attended so many academic forums where people ask about your relationship status. Why do you never mention me?" His answer had been, "Such trivial matters aren't worth mentioning." Coming back to the present, I looked at Julian and spoke coldly. "I am different from you, Julian, and Daniel is different from you too. You have no right to question me, and you certainly have no right to compare yourself to him." Julian couldn't accept it. "I never changed my feelings for you," he insisted. "I just loved one more person. Why has everything fallen apart? If you don't like Chloe, I can make her disappear from our world completely. Just come back to me, Elara." "You still don't understand," I said, shaking my head. "The root of this problem was never Chloe. It has always been you." He staggered back as if I had hit him. "Why?" he pleaded. "I was just deceived by her. I'm a victim in this, too. Why do you have to be so cruel to me?" People were coming and going at the entrance to the gallery, and his outburst was attracting a crowd. I took a deep breath and said, my voice sharp and final, "Julian, it is impossible for us to be together now. Stop humiliating yourself with this desperate clinging." Julian cared deeply about his public image and reputation. There had been times when I had waited for him at the entrance to his lab, and when his colleagues asked who I was, he would become embarrassed and later tell me never to wait for him there again. For him, what I had just said was a severe blow. I expected him to leave, but instead he just reddened, and then he knelt on the ground in front of everyone. "I came here to ask for your forgiveness," he announced to the crowd. "If you don't forgive me, I will stay kneeling here and I will not get up." "Well, well," a voice said, accompanied by slow clapping. "The Cloud Star Gallery has actually managed to get the great Professor Croft to perform for us. What an honor for our humble little place." It was Daniel, his words dripping with sarcasm. Julian shot him a look that was pure venom. Suddenly, a small figure pushed through the crowd with a look of unwavering determination. It was Chloe. She stood in front of the kneeling Julian, facing me. "Elara," she declared, "if you have a problem, direct it at me. Why do you have to torment and humiliate him?" The scene was an almost perfect mirror of Julian protecting her. It was then that I knew for certain that these two were made for each other. They were equally clueless. I had completely lost interest in entertaining these lunatics. I waved for the security guards to escort them out. I finally managed to finish my work at the gallery around midnight. Just as I was locking the front door, Chloe came running up to me again. "Elara, if you have any conscience at all, you'll go see him," she pleaded. "He's completely drunk and no one can reason with him. The doctor says he's already showing early signs of depression. If this continues, he's going to die because of you." I remembered the last time I had been to a bar was during the National Day holiday. That day, I had been so happy, putting on the wedding dress I had waited for so long, only to have my hopes and my face doused in water and accusations. It seemed that Julian was now walking the same path I had. I found him huddled in a corner of the bar, surrounded by empty bottles. His usually immaculate suit was rumpled and stained. "Waiter," he was yelling, "where's my drink?" "That's enough," I said, grabbing his flailing hands. I took the glass of mint water Daniel, who had come with me, handed me and splashed it in Julian's face. "Julian, can't you sober up?" He squinted his eyes, and when he finally recognized me, he threw his arms around me and began to wail like a lost dog. "Elara, why did you just abandon me?" He sobbed into my shoulder. "We love each other, don't we? I didn't cheat on you. My feelings never changed. Why are you leaving me?" I pushed him away. "Your love wasn't enough to make you remember the things I told you," I said. "I do remember," he insisted. "I remember you said you like sweets and that you enjoy amusement parks, and you like—" "Then how is it," I interrupted, "that you don't remember me saying that I cannot tolerate even the slightest amount of grievance in my relationship?" Julian froze, his mouth half open. I knew he hadn't forgotten. It was a case of knowing full well what he was doing and doing it anyway. He kept testing my limits, pushing the boundaries again and again, just to see how far my tolerance would stretch. He may not have truly changed his feelings for me, but he had fully intended to take advantage of my patience to conveniently keep Chloe in his life, in that ambiguous push and pull dynamic. "You do remember all those things," I continued, "but you never actually did any of them with me, did you? So it's not that you don't understand love, Julian. It's that you didn't want to give it to me. After 5 years together, you can't possibly have been unaware that I would never secretly bully Chloe. Every single time she called me Miss Vance, it wasn't just a refusal to acknowledge me as her professor's fiancé. It was a blatant provocation." I let out a bitter laugh and asked him a sincere question. "Julian, were you really fooled by her? If she hadn't come to confront me in the dressing room, I never would have laid a hand on her. You know that, don't you? And every single one of those posts in that online account, all those times she twisted the truth and encouraged her followers to harass me online. Did you really not see any of it?" My 3 questions left Julian silently weeping. In the flashing, colorful lights of the bar, his face was deathly pale. "Julian," I said, my voice softening slightly, "we were never in love. It was always me loving you and you loving yourself. But you are right, you didn't cheat and your feelings didn't change." Hearing this, Julian looked up, a tiny flicker of hope in his eyes. "But you exploited my sincerity," I finished, "and that is even more unforgivable." The truth, now laid bare from beneath his hypocritical facade, left him with nothing to say. He asked me one final question, his voice barely a whisper. "Did you ever truly like me?" "I used to," I said. "And do you like him now?" he asked, nodding towards Daniel. "I do," I said. "Why?" he choked out. "I like things that make me laugh." When we left the bar, Daniel couldn't wipe the smile off his face. "I heard everything you said in there," he said cheerfully. I pretended not to know what he was talking about. "What did you hear?" "You said you like me." "What was that? I can't hear you," I teased. "You said you liked Daniel Sung." "Sorry, I still can't hear you." Under the warm yellow light of a street lamp with autumn leaves scattering around us, the young man's confession was answered with a kiss. "You heard me right," I whispered. "Elara likes Daniel." Daniel has complained to my brother more than once that he has terrible taste in people, saying his one bad introduction wasted 5 years of my life. I asked my brother about it later. "Why were you so sure I would like Julian back then?" He scratched his head thinking, "I just remember you telling me once that you liked someone who was good at studying, so I found you a professor." I thought back. It must have been around the time I was transitioning from elementary to middle school. My grades had suddenly started to slip, and I was feeling incredibly frustrated. My brother was in the midst of his first puppy love at the time, and he had casually asked me what kind of boyfriend I would want in the future. I had offhandedly said I wanted someone who was really good at studying. I never imagined he would remember that for all these years. Daniel, who was listening nearby, looked like he had been struck by lightning. I waved a hand in front of his face. "What's wrong with you? You look like someone just stepped on your tail." He suddenly launched himself at my brother, playfully wrestling with him. "You idiot! You almost cost me my wife!" I found out later that Daniel had fallen for me at first sight when he had come to visit my family's house right after he graduated from high school. He had asked my brother what my ideal type was, and my brother had told him that I liked someone who was academically outstanding. But Daniel was never a great student. To try and live up to this ideal, he went abroad as an exchange student and then worked incredibly hard when he returned to secure his position as the heir to his family's company. But by the time he had accomplished all that, I was already with Julian. He had almost given up hope, but then my brother had unexpectedly asked him to accompany me for the wedding dress photos. He told me he was so excited that day he almost knelt and proposed to me on the spot. I thought back carefully over the few times we had met during that period, and I couldn't help but sigh. Someone who truly likes you will genuinely make an effort to become a part of your future and blend into your life. Chloe was, in the end, expelled from the university. Julian was officially diagnosed with depression, resigned from his position, and made plans to move abroad. She followed him without hesitation. We no longer had any friends in common, so I have no idea how their lives turned out. I used to receive postcards from other countries during major holidays, but Daniel intercepted all of them. I never even saw one. On the night before my wedding to Daniel, a travel-worn figure knocked on our door. It had been so many years that I had to look closely to recognize him. It was Julian. He held out a small, strawberry-shaped stuffed bear, and he begged me for another chance. "I've learned how to love someone now," he said, his voice earnest. "I will remember everything you say, and I will do everything in my power to bring you happiness. Ilara, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking for a chance for us to start over." I noticed that not far behind him, standing under a large banyan tree, was a woman with slightly curly hair. She was looking in our direction with an expression that was full of love, but also completely heartbroken. So many people spend their entire lives searching for what they call true love. When genuine affection is right in front of them, they take it for granted, always feeling like there will be more time, and so they continue their endless search. Then, when that true feeling is gone, they are filled with regret, unable to believe what they've lost, and they continue on their path of seeking. Chloe's methods were extreme, but there is no doubt that she genuinely loved Julian. It's just that over the years, he had become lost in his own obsessions, drifting further and further away from what love truly is. Remembering the 5 years we had spent together, I gave him one final piece of advice. "The chance to start over is standing right beside you," I said gently. "Don't lose what you already have a second time." The hand holding the strawberry bear remained suspended in the air as I closed the door. Not long after that, our family's company underwent a major business transformation, and both our families moved to a different city. I never received any more postcards, and I never heard any more news about Julian and Chloe. One afternoon, many years later, my grandson came home from university for his summer vacation. He asked me, "Grandma, how should you treat a girl that you like?" I thought about it for a moment, and then I told him, "Just make her laugh often.